We still speak to our spirits. In the silence of the jungle, they listen. Beneath the shade of the troncununo, they wait. We kneel before Mother Mary, her presence watching over us. Our faith is not a single story. It's a basket, woven strand by strand, old and new, held together to honor what we hold sacred. Our traditions have not disappeared. They've evolved, and they live on, carried in our hearts. Come with us as we explore the spiritual traditions of the Mariana Islands. Settled around 3,500 years ago, the Mariana Islands marked the first known human settlement in remote Oceania. Reached by voyagers who crossed more than 2,000 kilometers of open ocean from island Southeast Asia. This was the longest sea journey in human history at that time. Archaeological and genetic evidence links them to the early Austronesian expansion across the Pacific. In the Marianas, they shaped a culture deeply tied to the land, sea, and spirit. Among their most sacred traditions was ancestor veneration, honoring the dead as part of daily life. Ancestor veneration was deeply rooted in early Chamorro culture, as documented in Tiempo ni Manmofotna by the Division of Historic Preservation. This reverence for the dead shaped everyday life, spiritual beliefs, and community traditions. Chamorros honored their deceased relatives, called manonti, by preserving their skulls, cleansed by ocean, fauna, and sun, then anointed with coconut oil and kept in large woven baskets called tatahu. Family members would bow towards the skulls, showing respect and seeking their favor. They believed that the spirits could influence daily life, especially fishing. Disturbing a skull before a fishing trip was feared to bring bad luck, or worse. Spiritual figures, known as makana, often kept many skulls in their homes. They acted as intermediaries, believed to speak with the dead more easily than others. Burial practices reflected a strong sense of social hierarchy. High-ranking individuals received elaborate funerals with public mourning that could last up to 10 days. Families sang somber songs, decorated graves with palms, flowers, and shells, and performed symbolic acts of grief, burning homes, destroying boats, and destroying coconut trees. Their bodies were buried at their brothers' homes, honored with woven platforms. Lower status individuals were simply wrapped in new mats and buried in front of a respected relative's house. European visitors noted that Chamorros carried their deceased to visit the homes of relatives, inviting the spirits to return to where it was most welcome. Skulls were often exhumed soon after the body decomposed, signifying the ongoing connection between the living and the dead. Chamorros also believed that the soul's destination in the afterlife depended not on morality, but on the manner of death. Those who died naturally were said to enter a paradise underground called Sulares, full of food and peace, but those who died violently were sent to a place of self-torment, based on how they lived their lives. The first Europeans to lay eyes on the Mariana Islands were the Spanish, passing through in 1521. But for over a century, they paid little attention to the archipelago. That changed in 1662, when a Spanish priest, Father Diego Luis de Sanvitores, stopped briefly in Guam en route to the Philippines. Moved by a sense of divine purpose, Sanvitores believed he was called to serve the islanders. After multiple failed attempts, he finally secured royal support, thanks to Queen Regent Mariana of Austria. By 1668, he returned to Guam, and Spain officially claimed the islands, renaming them Las Marianas in the Queen's honor. Chamorro customs, especially spiritual practices, were soon banned. Sacred skulls of ancestors and carved relics were destroyed. Symbols of lineage and spirit erased. Resistance grew, and so did the Spanish response. Villages were burned, canoes destroyed, resistance leaders were executed, some beheaded, and their heads displayed as warnings. This dark chapter is known as the Spanish Chamorro Wars, a brutal campaign that lasted nearly 3 decades. With the help of Chamorro converts, the Spanish carried out reducción, a policy that forced survivors from the northern islands into centralized villages on Guam. Warfare, forced relocation, and introduced diseases devastated the population. An estimated 24 to 100,000 pre-colonial Chamorros were reduced to just 1,700 in 1758. A people once thriving across the Mariana Archipelago, brought to the edge of extinction. After more than 2 centuries under Spanish rule and the suppression of indigenous beliefs, the Chamorro people gradually became deeply rooted in the Catholic faith. That spiritual identity remained intact, even as the islands later came under German, Japanese, and eventually American control. Colonization reshaped our spiritual lives, but it could not silence our voices. The lisåyu, the Catholic rosary spoken in our native tongue, once foreign to us, became ours in language and spirit. To us, it's more than a prayer. It's a tradition that helps us to stay connected and help heal in a time of loss. We asked our spiritual leaders, elders, and community members, what does the lisåyu mean to you? Can you describe a lisåyu?
The lisåyu is the praying of the rosary, which of course is a prayer directed at Jesus and his mother. And in the context of death, it is a rosary prayed so that the soul of the deceased will receive God's mercy, will shorten his or her time in purgatory, and go to heaven as quickly as possible.
The lisåyu, the rosary, falls under the umbrella of what we call devotional prayers, which is praiseworthy. It's never mandated, it's more subjective and personal, but there are different devotional prayers such as the lisåyu that are popular amongst people, including our ancestors and our people here in the Marianas. I think when most people think of lisåyu, they do think of the lisåyu animas or the lisåyu matay, when there is a member of the family or community who has passed away. It's been in our DNA as Catholics and also here as islanders, Chamorros and Carolinians, to pray for our loved ones and to unite with the family members of the deceased, to give them that moral support, that emotional support, and that spiritual support.
Can you describe a lisåyu in the past and what it looks like today?
Lisåyu at that time when I was growing up is really simple. More on the praying, not too much of the food and, but visiting and literally just bread, biscuitsu, butter and jam, coffee, of course. And then, of course, the mama, chewing of the bitter nuts. The difference now, I see that they elaborate on the food. I kind of long to go back to where it was before, where nobody's expected, no rice. When my dad died, that's what he told us. When I die, no rice until I'm buried.
A lot of people, they just say, never mind the rosary, we just say Mass. They offer Mass for the 9 days. They don't bother about. And for me, it's they're forgetting that the Blessed Mother is, very, very faithful in helping us, also asking her son, to intercede for us.
How do these changes make you feel?
They make me feel very sad. There is something very comforting in the traditional lisåyu that we used to have when I was young. Thinking of my grandmother, my grandfather, on both sides, you know, aunties and uncles who have passed, and how lisåyus have really played a role in our grief. I feel, you know, it's so important to have family around you and pray together. And, you know, it makes me sad that, and right, it's understandable that it's hard to do that because it costs a lot of money. At the same time, you know, it was a way for us to heal. And so now I feel sad. I feel sad. I feel that I would like to continue the tradition, talk to our children about it, actually practice it.
Well, the loss of the lisåyu tradition among many, not all, but among many, is just one more way the whole community is loosening and not as tight-knit as before. So, but you know, we're losing our tight-knit connections in every way, right? So, you know, neighborhoods in the old days were like family, right? And now you don't even talk to your next door neighbor.
A lot of people, I think, are saying that it's not of value anymore. But for me, it's still very valuable, you know, especially for the first 9 days when the person just died. I hope that people will come back to that, you know, tradition and make it strong to maintain and keep that value that we have.
How can we preserve this for future generations?
We need to teach it to our kids. We need to pray with them, even when it's not a lisåyu for death. Just pray with them at the home, and they become familiar with it. And some of our kids will continue that tradition.
Gather my children monthly, at least monthly, and I let my grandchildren all pray the rosary in Chamorro. I'm teaching them, so all from the youngest one to the oldest, we're taking every decades of the rosary. One we lit with the mystery, which is pretty much the glorious mystery on Sundays, what we're praying. And then they pray the Our Father, Hail Mary, and the rest of the prayer. So that's made it a tradition now, so the whole family are come. So last Sunday we had it at home, and it's a joyful time to gather all the grandchildren also.
You know, more catechesis of, you know, why are we praying this, the power of prayer, the necessity, you know, of prayer. And I think integral to that, interconnected with that, is of course the practice of the language. You know, learning our faith is just like learning a language. To learn a language, it takes a lot of time and a lot of effort, repetition, and just being immersed in the culture of the language, in the environment. And I think that would also, you know, help, you know, especially, you know, as praying our the faith that is also in the vernacular. You know, I see it, you know, they're both they should be together. So family, and of course the preservation of our language, you know, which is integral to the subject of that sounds anonymous.
If we want our traditions to survive, we have to teach them, not just preserve them in books or museums, but pass them on through our voices, our hearts, our homes. Listen to our mañana. Speak the language. Remember the names of your ancestors. Don't let this be the last generation who remembers.